first item on is the adoption of the agenda. Recommendation is council adopt the September 24, 2018 regular meeting agenda as presented. Please, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Crog, Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, wondering if I could add a late item to the agenda, and that would be discussion surrounding any new development within the floodplain, especially with respect to the downtown core. This would be as a result of the BC housing development that we were getting information about today, supportive housing, and I do believe that there are issues that council would want to maybe discuss and get some information from staff on regarding development and new developments.
I'll second Councillor Tripp's motion for discussion.
All those in favor of the amendment?
Do we need discussion or?
We discussed what comes out.
Oh, but you're okay to amend the agenda to include that on the agenda?
Once we're voting on the amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, all those in favor of the amendment?
Well,
Then if I don't like it, I'll
What do you want to
yeah,
okay, go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
I understand the concern from the councillors wanting to bring this forward. However, we did receive an email from our CAO who indicated that we could be putting ourselves in some jeopardy legally if we start discussing and recommending and asking questions with respect to this particular issue. So at this time, I will not be able to support that, this resolution.
Councillor Tripp.
I don't think we'd be putting the corporation at any risk by discussing something that I think is a no-brainer. If we don't have floodworks and different things in place, like we haven't got established it yet, a building, a height, different things, I think it's just incumbent upon us as council to discuss this, because we are actually being presented now with something that could be imminent before we have any of these conditions in place. I'd say that puts the corporation at a lot more risk. If we let somebody build and then they come back to us in the spring because their place got flooded and wrecked, and then they're suing us because we didn't have the proper things in place to save ourselves from that. So I do believe that it warrants a fulsome discussion. I'd like to see it put on the agenda.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, through you to our CAO, I was just rereading the email here, and I understand not to put any resolutions forward, but I thought it was okay to discuss, so I just wanted clarification.
If council so chooses, they want to discuss it by all means.
Yeah, and that was my recommendation as a return email to discussion, okay, but
Yeah.
no resolution,
Yeah.
because it's not in our wheelhouse to start doing resolutions on the matter. Okay, so again, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, so carried. So all those in favor of the amended agenda as presented? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right, moving along to adoption of the minutes. Recommendation that council adopts the September 4th, 2018 special legal in-camera meeting minutes as presented. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tripp. Discussion. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Secondly, recommendation the council adopts the September 4th, 2018 regular meeting minutes as presented. Again, may I have a mover, please? Councillor Tripp. Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right, moving on to written reports of council. Recommendation is that all written reports of council submitted to the September 24th, 2018 regular meeting be received. May I have a vote, please? Councillor Tripp, Councillor Butler. Discussion, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the UBCM this year was very beneficial for all of us that attended, council and staff and the regional director, our MLA. I felt we all worked really well together at the meetings that we attended. And there was just so much going on. It was actually hard to pack it all into a councillor's report and get it in a couple of days after we got back, right? Because we had to have them submitted in time for the agenda. And I don't think I even included in my report that we met with the RCMP We had quite a few meetings this time, and I felt that in the past we didn't have as many, and this year with the flood, I think it was really beneficial to speak with all of those different agencies, with BC Housing, RCMP, the Attorney General, 2 or 3 different ministries. It's hard to, there were so many meetings, but we didn't have as much time to attend the resolution sessions and maybe some of the workshops, but we did fit in as many as we could. And I don't think I included that our 3 motions got passed, which was pretty exciting. All 3 of those motions were in regards to increasing policing services and getting criminals off of our streets, because we know that's a huge issue, not just for us, but other communities in the province as well. And all 3 of those motions, although they didn't have a recommendation from the resolutions committee of the UBCM, so we had to discuss 2 of them, all 3 of the motions went through without any objections from anyone, from any other councils, so that was really positive.
Thank you. All those in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right, moving onwards to the verbal report from the RDKB rep, which would be myself. The recommendation is that, well, first I'll do my report. The meetings I attended, August 30th, board meeting, not much pertinent to Grand Forks other than the fact of the decking on the aquatic center, which is still under planning and development, and the resolution was put forward that the staff prepares the details and the budgets for the amendment and increase up to 25% for the Grand Forks Aquatic Center to be presented at the next board meeting in September, which will be this Thursday. On another meeting on September the 5th, BCDC, we had a few delegations, one of them being Mark Jean from the Speakeasy Cannabis Club in regards to medical marijuana and recreational cannabis production in Rock Creek. Seemed like a very interesting project, with a huge amount of jobs being created, and they're having a problem, and they will be having a problem recruiting people to work there. But looks like a very interesting project. Also, we have Lisa Trotter from BC Transit informing us that IHA will be pulling out of the BC Transit system, and as of March, we were going to be looking at alternatives. Well, actually, they're looking into alternatives already because it's a problem with the fund. Basically, that's about it. So may I have a mover to receive? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Butler, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, so at the UBCM, I was able to speak with our regional director and also another couple communities that have community forests in their area, and they find them quite profitable. And Director Russell mentioned that this is something that the regional district has been looking at for a while and is in discussions about, but I haven't heard anything back from you regarding that at the board meeting, so I'm just wondering if you have any information on that being discussed or where that project's at?
No.
Okay.
Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Would we be able to get a little bit more information about that from you right now?
So I spoke with 2 municipalities that have community forests, and Director Russell was saying that this was something that they were doing in conjunction, looking at doing in our area, not just in Grand Forks, but as the regional district. And the communities that have them say that they have more grant funding available to them, and quite a lot of their projects in their communities are completed using money from community forest grants. The community forests are managed by contractors that they hire. But no, I don't have a lot of information, that's why I was asking, and it's research I can do on my own, but there's a lot of things out there to do research on right now.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. That was looked into some years ago when I was first on council, and that was brought forward under an economic development initiative. The startup costs on that then were in excess of $1 million. I don't know what they would be today. And that, you have to put that money up and it takes time, you know, to pay it back. But yes, there are benefits.
And that's why communities go in together on
Yeah, Midway and Greenwood have one together, so yeah. I think, oh, I shouldn't say, I thought Nelson might have one too, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
All right. Do we have a mover and a seconder on it? Okay, so all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right. Going on to recommendations from staff for decisions. And the subject matter is the appointment of Deputy Chief Elections Officer from Corporate Services. Recommendation is that council appoints Kevin McKinnon, Deputy Chief Election Officer, at a rate of $800 for the City of Grand Forks for the purpose of conducting the 2018 local government election. May I have a vote, please? Councillor Hammond, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. Okay, on to information items. Airport water main trees from Deputy Manager of Operations and Sustainability. Recommendation the council receives for information a memo from the Deputy Manager of Operations and Sustainability regarding the airport water main trees. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Hammond. All those in favor? Unless there's discussion. Anyone opposed? So carried. Bylaws. Bylaw 2045-A1, 2018-2022, the financial plan amendment from our Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation is that council gives final reading to the 2018-2022 financial plan amendment bylaw number 2045-A1. May I have a vote, please, Councillor Thompson. Seconder, Councillor Hammond. Discussion. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right, moving on to our next bylaw, which is 2050, council members' remuneration and expenses from corporate officer and chief financial officer. Recommendation is that council gives final reading to the council remuneration and expenses bylaw number 2018, and that council rescinds minimum expense, benefits, and allowance policy number 304, and that council rescinds council remuneration policy number 305.
I will move that we give final reading to the, I think these should be done in 3 separate motions.
Okay.
I think that's cleaner.
So if you're moving to divide it, then I'll second that if it's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. And now,
So I will, excuse me. I will move that council give final reading to council remuneration and expenses bylaw number 2050, 2018.
second. Councillor Tripp. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right.
I move that council rescinds minimum expense, benefits, and allowance policy number 304.
Second. Councillor Crocker. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried.
And I move that council rescinds council remuneration policy number 305.
Second, please. Councillor Tripp. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. All right. All right. Bylaw 2051, 2019, revenue anticipation order from our Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation as council gives first 3 readings to 2019 revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw number 2051. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Butler, Councillor Tripp. Hearing no discussion. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. Bylaw 2052, Nature Park dedication from Development and Engineering. Recommendation that council adopts Nature Park bylaw number 2052. Councillor Thompson, seconder, please. Councillor Butler. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. Next one. Bylaw 2053, Cannabis Delegation from Development and Engineering. Recommendation is that council adopts the Cannabis Delegation bylaw number 2053. May I have a move, please? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Crook. Any discussion? Councillor Tripp.
This is going entirely too smoothly.
Got a lot of money on this meeting.
Oh, dear, I have to be finished by, okay, I'll talk really fast. When this came forward, I was not, I expressed that I was not in favor of this. I don't think that Bill 30 has the intention to have councils delegate licensing and permitting to municipal staff. And I just believe that we would be doing a disservice to future councils if we relinquish this right to staff. And I understand staff has made clear arguments that they will still canvass the public and that they will make their recommendations known to council. I just feel that council, because this is new legislation, cannabis coming in is new in this area of the country, there may be a lot of people who are in favor, but in many other areas of the country, it's still quite a big issue and a big deal. And I feel that for future councils, we need to give them the right to be able to engage in this. So for those reasons, I again won't be voting for this resolution here.
Any other discussion, Councillor Hunter?
Yeah, as of October, this is going to be a legitimate legal business just like any other, and it's regulated, and if they have a legal business license, I don't think that, and this council is already set the zoning, and like anything else within our community, if it fits within the zoning and it's a legal enterprise and they have a business license, I don't think the council should have the right to deny a business license or an operation for a member that wants to set up a business. I think the guidelines have already been put in place with regards to zoning, and I think it's out of our hands at this point.
Councillor Butler?
We've seen what happens when developments meet zoning and don't come before council. We're seeing that happen right now. And unfortunately, council has no say. And sometimes the public would like council to have more say when things go through without any input from the council or the public. We're seeing that happen with our developments. So in some cases, it is nice to have the second set of eyes, to have a second chance, to have a look at something before it goes through. And so I'll be voting with Councillor Tripp.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Councillor Butler, Councillor Tripp. Motion carried. All right, moving on to our late items, and I believe Councillor Tripp, you had made a motion. Open up some discussion.
Thank you thank you, I appreciate that, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, I know that we're specifically maybe focusing on the BC Housing, Supportive Housing Project because it has come to the forefront, and we're dealing with a piece of property that is right downtown, and it's new development in the downtown core. But I know that the recovery group have been grappling with where, setting the building construction level. I know that that was certainly an issue for the hydrologist when he was through. We've got a whole lot of works going on in terms of floodplain mapping, and we are uncertain as to what the province is going to do in terms of the ask that we have in for floodworks protections. We don't know what that is, and I think just as a community, how are we going to invite people to be building in areas that are potential areas that are going to be flooded? I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I don't know that any developer actually coming in would feel comfortable with that, and yet here we are grappling with this issue. So I wanted to bring it forward for discussion. I wanted to hear what the other councillors had to say. I wanted to ask staff if council could get some additional information on that building height, because what I've understood is that it has to be 2 feet above where the actual last recorded flood level was. I could be wrong. I don't know that. But that would mean, because we were standing down in 2 feet of water on that corner the day of the flood, and so that would mean that the building would need to be at least 4 feet higher than what it is, and that may be wrong too. But there's just many questions that I feel that we should be finding out the answers to before any kind of licenses are given out or development permits are given out. And again, we don't have anybody here, we don't have the the building inspector here, and we don't have people from the development here. And so I don't know if these questions can be answered, but I would like to see them brought forward so that they can be.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and I'm just curious what we would do if someone applied to build a new house in North Ruckle. What if somebody wanted to build a new house in South Ruckle and we don't know exactly what the buyout zone is even going to be yet? How could we approve a new development in either one of those communities not knowing if they're in a buyout zone and the provincial government's going to take that land? Is that fair to do that?
Councillor
Yeah, I think we're mixing a couple of things. People will be building in South Ruckle, rebuilding.
New developments.
Yeah, but rebuild as well as, I'm sure that new development's gonna go in there. The buildings that are downtown, the newer ones weren't really affected by the flood. They're raised to today's level, or yesterday's level, whatever it was, like the optometrist and
The Granby building.
the money store and the Granby built, so those were all.
building got water in.
Yeah, but the Granby building didn't. And it was the last one.
Yeah, so they're already built to there. We don't know what the height is gonna be yet. As soon as we know that. This seemed to come up in relation to the interesting housing proposal. See, no swearing or nothing. But those, they have to have that information before any of the permits or anything will go out. So I think it's a jumping of the gun, and what if it's not them, but somebody just wants to build a building downstairs or downtown for a business, that would then have an effect on them. This is gonna be a bit of a process, right, so.
Councillor Thompson.
I think BC Housing heard today loud and very clear the business community's concerns and council's concerns. And until such time as Armin has had an opportunity to go back and digest it, discuss things with her staff, get some answers to some things that we were asking about. I think, I don't have an issue with discussing it, but I think it's maybe perhaps a bit premature in this process, and I really would appreciate a good and more fulsome discussion once we've heard back.
Councillor.
Yeah, I think we're a bit premature on this. And I kind of mixed on this because I understand where you're going and why. But at the same time, they can't start building without a development permit, and that permit will give them the guidelines at that time. That they can't do anything until they've got that. So I'd hate to see any other new buildings coming into the downtown core, because what you're saying would basically affect the Tim Hortons across the street or any other new development, because you're not saying south of Central and, you know, east of 2nd or 3rd, you're saying the downtown. So I think that's going to be very restrictive for us to attract any new commerce or any new development downtown that wouldn't be impacted by a flood. So I would just hold off, because I think it's premature and it might be a little redundant in the fact that they can't do any building until they've got a building permit in place.
Yeah, these are all good points that have been brought up, but I mean, I think in the end, whatever development does come in here on whatever properties are going to have to abide by whatever these new rules and regulations are. It seems to me that we're being sort of forced into it in the sense to look at it, because we do have a project that is coming to us and suggesting, and of course we know that this is going to roll out in a fashion, but they're suggesting that they would want to get working on that sooner than later. So I'm just thinking, I'd like to put it on staff's radar. I think these are things that council should be needing to look at. Because yes, what if, like there's a property right across the street there? What if somebody buys that and wants to put something up? And can we assure whoever is building, well, yes, you're going to be protected from flood waters, and yes, this is the level that you need to be at, and yes, we're going to have all the storm drains, and we're not doing a 4-year sewer program on that street corner.
Construction trucks
I'm
kicking in.
just saying, I do think that some foresight here might be to look at this, because I believe it is going to be an issue. So,
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Hammond.
I would think that any permits that came in, if somebody was wanting to build in North Ruckle or South Ruckle, that would be a discussion between the applicant and the building inspector to advise what the city's endorsing and asking the government to do. And secondly, we can't make decisions on elevations of anything until we get the reports back. And that's will be forthcoming through the emergency recovery team. And so, you know, I can appreciate the impatience that we want to do something, we want to do it now. But from my perspective, I want to do something, but I want to do it right and make an informed decision. And I'm just asking for some patience, because this is going to take a long time. But if we come together as a community and support one another as a community, we can do it.
To our CEO first.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just for council's knowledge, I had a chat today with the planning manager, and they do have like preliminary measurements from when the flood happened, albeit they are not in an engineer's report or anything that staples it down. But as for our discussion, if there's a building permit put out in those areas, they do have some rudimentary measurements that they can go by. The proof is that there are some buildings, I think as Councillor Krog said, that were built to the current flood construction level pieces, which is basically, there's a built-in freeboard. I think in my email I advised council that there's actually an extra 2 feet above where the anticipated flood was, and the buildings that are built like that actually did not receive any damage. Really, it was all done. So looking at that and looking at preliminary flood measurements, it will all be taken into consideration if a building permit was to be issued.
Councillor Hammond and Councillor Crowe.
Well, the other way to look at this too is, as long as the provincial government is a landowner in our downtown core, they're going to be sure to get the money released for the dike, right? I mean, that's another way of looking at it. As long as they own property here and they're a stakeholder, we have a big ask into the provincial government, and they're going to probably put a push on that so that we can get that dike built to protect the whole downtown.
Councillor Crowe, Councillor Hammond.
Just a note, new floodplain levels. The one advantage is there won't be any drive-throughs downtown. Because you drive through and you're like, because the roads aren't going up.
Councillor Butler.
I can't top that. What was I gonna? Now you probably need to. Oh, wanting to do it right, and that's why I was thinking, and I think Councillor Tripp was thinking that waiting for that flood mapping report from Urban Systems that comes in the spring that gives us the details. Computerized mapping of all the different levels within the floodplain will tell us exactly which areas need to be built to what level, and waiting for that report we'll know exactly the lay of the land and how everything needs to be built. So putting measures in place now and starting buildings now without that detailed report wouldn't be as secure as waiting another 6 months for that.
Councillor Thompson.
Can we put some pressure on Urban Systems to get that done? Please?
Your worship, I'll mention it to the recovery team.
That's right, because it's in their wheelhouse. All right. And I will move it for the discussion,
I guess.
whatever we need to,
Yeah.
just pass it by. Good enough. All right, moving on to questions from the public and the media. Again, please restrict your questions to the topic on the agenda.
Can I ask a
You wanna
question?
sit up there? Go ahead.
I forgot to ask a couple questions during my report. I'd sent a couple questions out to staff to ask during report time, and I was hoping I could ask that now, if you guys are okay with that. I had asked about the minutes from the ad hoc housing committee that we were told was formed, that was meeting with BC Housing about this development, and we had had a note on our last reports from staff that one of our staff members was taking minutes for that ad hoc committee. So I've asked now a couple times to get the minutes from that ad hoc committee so that council can see what was happening leading up to this project. And I got an email back saying that those minutes would be up on the flood recovery page, possibly by today. But I was hoping that they could just be given to council as well, and I'm wondering where that's at.
You have to address that. Address it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So the recovery team, I didn't manage to check with Graham today, but I didn't see an email back from him regarding this, if that was uploaded or not. So my assumption right now, it's not uploaded. Due to election season being on right now, we have to notify the public as a whole and treat everybody the same, and can't treat council any different regarding giving access specifically only to council at this point. So, yeah, because, well, we have to treat everybody equally, because otherwise it wouldn't be fair to other possible candidates to see those notes. So we're trying to make it as a public and fair of a process as possible.
Could you clarify what legislation that comes from?
That doesn't come from any legislation. This was an ad hoc housing group that met. So we have notes for the meetings. We're trying to make it publicly available for everybody. It's simply about fairness for all of council and all of the candidates at the same time.
Who's on that committee?
That's what I'd like to know, that's why I'm asking for the minutes.
Who's on that committee?
It wasn't a committee, it's a housing group. I attended one meeting, so myself, that was one of the first ones. There was housing representatives for Beth's, Gables, a couple of the other groups in town that have housing projects.
Because I wasn't even aware that there was a committee or an ad hoc committee in existence, so it'd be very interesting to know the,
So your worship, with this ad hoc committee, it was part of the recovery team as they were moving forward, and so they have the different pillars, and one was housing, and so what they did is they got together, anybody that had some involvement with any of the projects that they had in Grand Forks, and that's why you had somebody from the BC Housing Society, you had somebody that was with the former BAS, and there was other different individuals that had different initiatives, and they were just there to brainstorm and put their heads together to help the recovery team. So again, this is part of the operational pieces that the recovery team is trying to get together to get some knowledge of.
okay, but we also have one of the candidates that's on that committee, which is a conflict, in my opinion. Councilor Hammond.
Can I just get clarification that this ad hoc committee was talking about the need for housing for those that were displaced by the flood, and not for this current project that's underway with BC Housing for the supported housing?
Garcia.
Absolutely, your worship. The reason for them to be there was to determine how we're gonna meet the immediate needs and what we're gonna do with different plans moving forward. As I said before, it's part of the recovery team and part of the whole flood piece. So that was the whole.
Mhm. But it has no element to be involved in the supporting housing
No.
part of it. This is which is kind of throws me off, because why are they involved with the supportive housing with BC Housing? It has nothing to do with the recovery.
Yeah, we're talking.
Yeah, they were. This was
They were.
before.
Um,
That's what Paul.
You think so?
when the steering committee was formed by yourself to deal with the housing issues.
2 years ago.
It was referred to 2 members of that steering committee to do a further investigation and to come back to council. I'm still waiting for those people to come back to council with their findings. They were going to be dealing with BC Housing and some other things that that was supposed to be happening, and we've just been left totally out of the loop, and I think that is totally inappropriate. If you're asked to do something and you're not able to, please let us know.
We don't know that they were involved in. Or had.
Well, I'm saying that what the steering committee, what the resolve was for, and in fact, the 2 people that were going to deal with it, one was with Beth's,
Yeah.
and the other one was with the Gables. And so if they're now sitting at another table without coming back to council and giving a report to council on what their findings were, I have to say I'm extremely disappointed.
But the findings would have been for different results.
Regardless,
This is reflecting.
there are still issues with housing, and we've not heard anything.
Thank you. So we maybe can get clarification from staff. Did BC Housing have any meetings with staff and or an ad hoc committee concerning the supportive housing project?
Your worship, the only transpiration or whatever that we had, and I did clarify this with council when BC Housing announced that they were doing this, as a mandate, staff has to provide information to any potential developers should they ask for it at the front counter, whatever it is, and they say we are looking at certain properties, what are the zonings, and that's basically the mandate that we have as staff to be able to give that. That was something I clearly articulated to council in an email right after we found out that this property was purchased. So I don't know why everybody's still digging around with this, but this is exactly what we have to do as staff. Any kind of information that comes like that by any particular developer is held in confidence. Because if you have one developer that's looking for something and you have another developer that's looking at the same property, that's when organizations like the cities get into trouble with courts on pieces of property. Until there's actually something that says that it's all pie in the sky at that point, because people speculate all the time.
Because we're trying to find out specifically if there was an ad hoc committee that was working with BC Housing. That's what specifically on this project.
No.
Because if that's the case, that should have come to council
There's no ad hoc committee that was meeting with BC Housing.
over this project. And that was my question. Thank you.
The only comment I have on all of this is the fact, and I'll go back again to my former statement, which was in this week's paper, was the fact that staff did all, to the best of my knowledge, what they had to do in regarding to legislative obligations. The problem, and let's say the onus should have been on BC Housing, and I will be emphatic about that, because whether council and myself can do anything about this project is irrelevant. It's the way it was rolled out and the procedure that for an organization as huge as BC Housing, for not to contact the CEO and the mayor of this community and council is deplorable. And I can't say it emphatically enough, because we should have known what their intentions were. Whether we could change it, steer it aside, or negate it is irrelevant. But common courtesy and protocol, which I stated to our Minister Selena Robinson, dictates that at least they should have said, this is what we're planning to do. That's all I'll say. Councillor Butler.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CAO, we received an email from our CAO stating that BC Housing was meeting with an ad hoc housing committee the day before this was released to the public. So I don't understand why now we're being told that they didn't meet with an ad hoc housing committee. Secondly, if our staff is sitting on a committee and taking notes, and our staff is employed by this municipality and by this council, and now this council is being told we don't have access to minutes being taken by our staff that we're paying for, I find something seriously wrong with that. So right now, I would like to put forward a motion that council directs staff to deliver the ad hoc housing committee minutes that they took minutes for to this council.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Over to our CEO. And then our corporate officer.
Okay, for clarification, your worship, Councillor Tripp asked if there was an ad hoc committee working with BC Housing. There was no ad hoc committee working with BC Housing. The day BC Housing announced that they bought the property with staff on the Wednesday, they were coming up on the Thursday, and they wanted to meet with the recovery team group that comprised of these individuals. And it was just after they said they were doing this, they just wanted to meet with them. So it's not that they're working with them, they wanted to meet and discuss. So I just want to make clarification on why they had that meeting when they came up here.
And I got informed 2 hours before that meeting. Deplorable. Unacceptable.
And that was the ad hoc committee that was.
Well,
sent
it
out.
wasn't even a committee, it was this housing group, your worship, and so it was thrown together, and I guess they wanted to discuss everything with whoever was working with the recovery team at the time. Albeit they're really not connected, but it was the people that deal with housing in the area. So that's.
It's really helpful to know that.
Sorry?
Was this through the flood recovery team?
Well, it's the same committee that was developed through that.
Okay, no, but it had nothing to do with the city, so if I'm hearing what I'm hearing, the flood recovery team, as a component of that, had people sitting, dealing with housing, and Rachel Warner is the one that comes to my mind, because that was kind of her bailiwick, I think, that's on housing for people. So, were there others that she was working with as part of the housing? Under the.
There was volunteers,
Yeah.
so like.
She's the lead
pop
for
and
that
stuff.
team,
Yeah.
that pillar. She's the housing lead.
But so when people are meeting and discussing, is that who's meeting and discussing?
Our CAO told us at Whistler who was sitting at that table. I don't know why it can't be repeated here.
I would defer to the CAO for that.
Again, your worship, let the recovery team actually say it's all right to put the minutes on the webpage for the boundary flood piece.
Yeah.
And it'll be there for everyone. I don't know why this is such a nefarious piece, but the minutes we put out there, what the deputy, what the corporate officer said to, as far as releasing extra information, we give information at this time of year through an election process as required to council when we need to. When there's additional information that comes out there, and it doesn't matter if it's one of our incumbents or if it's a candidate or whoever it is, if somebody's asking for information and we can release, we put it all on the website for everybody to see. So that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I think when this first rolled out, everybody was in shock and looking to point the finger somewhere and who was responsible and who was meeting with BC Housing and how did this happen. We know that we weren't involved and we were told staff wasn't involved, so we wanted to know who was involved. But it appears after things sort of unraveled, nobody was involved. It was a culmination of a lot of different people over a period of probably the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. From people that sat on the ad hoc committee for housing 2 years ago when they had that committee set up, and we had that consultant from Kelowna looking at doing a needs assessment of what was needed in Grand Forks, to more recently individual members from our community writing personal letters to BC Housing asking for help here to provide housing for homeless. It didn't go through a formal committee, and I don't believe that they had any formal meetings with BC Housing. I think, and I believe our CAO, when she says that they heard about it the day before it rolled out, when they were called for a lunch meeting, and I believe that's when Daniel was there to take the minutes of that meeting. So I don't.
It's Dee taking the minutes from.
Well,
I don't know
I
if they were
still
that
don't
Daniel?
think,
They were
Daniel's
minutes.
shaking his
They
head
weren't.
no.
I still don't believe that there's anything nefarious going on within staff or within this corporation. I just think that it was just an accumulation of information from BC Housing. As we know, BC Housing has dealt with 3 different groups, including the city over the past 3 years, 4 years, offering money. Do you need money? They went to Beth's, they went to Valley Women's Coalition, they came to the city, and nothing has come out of it, and they've never gotten back to us. And the communication between BC Housing and any of these groups has been very poor. I think that they just truly decided by gathering all this information or wherever they got it from, off the StatsCan website, because they didn't deal with our local Services BC. They just felt that they needed to fit their agenda of providing 2,000 supported housing within the province within that 1-year time frame when they announced it at last year's UBCM. And I think they were proud to announce it at this year's UBCM when Selena Robinson got up and said, I'm pleased to announce that we've met our obligation to put 2,000 units within the province. So I don't think they really looked at the concerns of the community and what our actual needs were.
If I may just comment on this, there always seems to be this comment that Dee Dee was taking notes, but if I just understood properly, if she was under the authority of she was on the EOC. So it's not, we can say that staff was doing it. If she's doing it under the helm of EOC recovery, it's a whole different perspective. So I don't know where we're trying to go with this, but
Just
to our corporate
to
office.
clarify quickly, Mr. Mayor, so there was simply notes taken, there wasn't any minutes taken. I did not take notes on the first meeting when I was there. That was the only official meeting I attended. I was at the other one where BC Housing asked to meet with the group as well. Again, I did not take notes. Dee Dee didn't take notes on that one either, neither did Wendy. It was held in the recovery center, so somebody from the recovery team took notes. We're trying to collect all those notes right now and sum them up into documents and basically get them out for the public to see that there was nothing going on. So anyways, it's just to clarify, there's only notes, it wasn't official meetings, otherwise they would have to be advertised and things like that.
I think the whole aspect comes around again to, like I said before, this is a backdoor approach by BC Housing. I don't think staff has anything to do with this or being implicated in this.
And, sorry,
Councillor Crawford.
and the flood recovery people, if they come to town to meet them the day before, well, they've already bought the land. They've already have the project. They were here to announce it, not to talk to the flood recovery, because it has nothing to do with the flood, period. And that's why I thought everybody was looking at the ad hoc committee, not flood recovery, but the ones that were involved before.
It's the steering committee.
2 years ago.
Yeah, and is this sound, or is more of a result of that than anything recent?
Well,
So
if-
there have been some conversations, obviously,
But if
with
that
certain
meeting-
individuals in town.
If that meeting was a result of the work that was done by the 2 people that it was referred to, that should have come to council.
Oh,
first.
totally, 100%.
The whole meeting should have been presented at least to the head of the corporation and to council, because other communities where they've approached this type of project,
Yeah.
they have been rejected.
Well, for them to go with a mayoral candidate to hand deliver those letters to the business community, and it was in your face, I think, and we made it abundantly clear, both to the minister and to Orman, that that process stunk. Absolutely stunk. It was unacceptable.
Okay, we're into question period now, so
Could I have a motion on the floor,
Motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd just like to speak to my motion.
go ahead.
I think a lot of the confusion that's happened since the flood lies with the delegation of authority between the recovery team and council. We have unelected people making decisions for our community that this council now has no control over. That's not a democratic process. The people of this town elected council to make decisions for them, not staff and other individuals that are non-elected sitting on committees that are dealing directly with the province on behalf of us. That's council's job, and I think those, especially the incoming council, is really gonna have to sit down and figure out the path of authority here. And the regional district's taken on a lot of that responsibility as well, and it's not that I'm unappreciative of it, I know that they're working hard. And this is a new path for everyone, we know that. But council and the citizens are losing authority over decisions that are being made in their town, and I think that really needs to be reined back in. And that's what I'm trying to do here by delegating the authority back to council to, even if it's just in camera, I mean, to see those notes, to be able to have access to the decisions that are being made on behalf of our citizens, I think is imperative for the democratic process.
Can you disclose who the two delegates were that worked on, that were to report back about the housing?
Sorry?
Can you disclose who the two people that were supposed to report back about the housing?
I don't know what the purpose should be.
Your worship, is a little bit before my time. I just remember that there was a steering committee that was, I think there was a few members of council, and I'm not sure exactly who all was going to be on there. And I don't know who the main proponents were. I just, I remember our planning manager just saying that, they had whoever the group was, had the autonomy to use, I think it was Mr. Smith at the time that was doing some work, and I guess they never used them, and I think, I don't know where it went, I think that's.
No, they did use it. But when the committee was disbanded, that was done in public.
The community charter states that any standing committee of council is open to the public. It is a public committee. Any public member can attend that committee meeting.
So I
Absolutely.
will take the responsibility for releasing the names. And it was Judith Lloyd and Jean Robert.
But whether they had any further conversation with BC Housing is
Do we
unknown.
have any
Well,
other,
we've not had any reports back, so.
Les, did you want to say something? Because-
Yeah, I did, yeah. Les Johnson, GFTV.ca. I mean, they didn't really get back to me, so you can't really blame me, but hey, I'll take the blame. It kind of sucks being in the dark, doesn't it? Excuse my language. So here's a question. Do you guys have any way of meddling in how Fizz does their business or where they set up their shop or anything like that? Do you have any way of telling mental health from here how to deal with their clients? I mean, like, what has this got to do with you? I get it, you're council and this is the whole thing of the city and everything else, but when people look at the way that the city has dealt with the homeless situation, the way that the city deals with nonprofits that they don't agree with, the museum, bang, the building's gone. Well, gee, Whispers of Hope, bang, the building's gone. Like, BC Housing is coming here to help us. A lot of people don't like the way they're going about it and where it's going and everything. I understand that. But they're coming here to help us, and they're willing to spend an awful lot of money to do that. Not only that, but their nonprofit is going to be fully funded to the tune of $800,000 to maybe $1 million, unlike Whispers of Hope. So I would ask you to sit back and think about that. This will be, whether or not you agree with me or not, it will be a step in the right direction for this community to deal with the homeless problem. And what I hear today from the business community and from, I suspect, some councillors too, is that if it's not the way we want it to be, we want it to just not happen at all.
It's got nothing to do with how we feel about it.
Pardon me?
So I have a question for you, Les.
Yeah, okay.
Just as a rebuttal to what you said. If it was such a good endeavor on BC Housing, why were they secretive about it? Why would they not come forward to the head of the corporation, which is myself and council, to at least let us know? I stated that it's irrelevant whether we have any control over how it plays out. But if it's such a good news story, why was it so secretive? And why was it like a backdoor dealing?
You would have to ask them. But no, you would have to ask them for the answer to that. I can't give you the answer to that because I was not included in any of that stuff. I live in the dark like a mushroom.
I got a call from Minister Selena Robinson regarding the other project on 19th and 68, and
Yep.
I applauded her for it. So that's a good news story. So why would this minister go out of her way to contact me to let me know of this affordable housing and seniors project?
Here's a question for you. Is BC Housing a Crown Corporation or is it a ministry division?
It's a division of the ministry.
Is it? Or is it a Crown Corporation?
Am I wrong?
Well, I'm just
It's
curious.
overseen by Selena Robinson, so I'm.
Yeah.
She's
Because Crown Corporations, you know, they have their own, they don't necessarily have to bend to what some minister or political party says.
No, but they can also not come into this community and bulldoze their way in and do what they want without at least some kind of advising. They don't have to ask our permission, as you said. This is true, but they could at least say, this is what we're planning to do. We feel this is great for Grand Forks, anything on those lines. But was that done? Nope.
Okay, but they don't have to do that. Just like Tim Hortons didn't have to ask your permission
I'm
to
sure
put in a drive-through.
Premier John Horgan would not appreciate anybody in his caucus or his ministries not informing him of what's going on.
And if I'm wrong, if BC Housing is not a Crown Corporation, then I'm wrong. But if it is a Crown Corporation, you know what? They don't really have to ask a minister.
I didn't say
They're a
they
Crown
had to ask.
Corporation.
I never said they had to ask.
And I would also point out, getting into this whole thing of secrecy and why BC Housing did it as a numbered corporation in secret to keep the price from being jacked up. But here's the thing, you should all be aware that if you succeed in getting them to pull out of that thing and not have it there, and then somewhere in the next couple of years, somebody puts a development in there, a commercial development that one of you is connected with, you're in trouble. I mean, you're in trouble for what you're trying to do here. If it comes out that way, I'm not saying that any of you are, but this is the kind of, this is why
Google says
all the
you're right,
information.
by the way.
Pardon me?
Google says you're right.
That they're a Crown Corporation?
Yeah, it says that on the BC website. BC Housing is a Crown corporation that develops, manages, and administers subsidized housing in the province, is also responsible for the administration of the Homeowner Protection Act.
Yes, so you see, they are their own.
This is right.
You know, the province can suggest, but the province cannot order. The province cannot demand them to do things. The province can ask them to do things. They're a Crown corporation. So
My only comment is common courtesy and protocol. If there's such a huge Crown corporation, and you know what? I will defy whatever you say and what they say, because it's common courtesy that you go at least to the head of this corporation.
and I would suggest
All
that,
I'm saying,
you're not the
not
first-
to ask for permission, but to at least inform.
and I would suggest that you're not the first politician or other person who has felt slighted by the actions of a Crown corporation, because they behave that way. They just do.
But that doesn't make it right.
No, it doesn't necessarily make it right, and it hurts. I get it.
Oh, it doesn't hurt. It's
No,
just
it
very
stings.
appalling that something like this from a huge organization would do that, would disrespect the head of another corporation and its council members.
There you go, Mr. Mayor. Sure.
Councillor Crog first, Councillor Hammond, and then Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Tripp. Okay, see what you've done. You've opened up, Councillor Tripp.
So, Armin has a really good idea of how the business community feels. She's got a really good idea now that all of council's talked to her about how council feels about it. And our concerns, but they keep talking about utilizing and mixing seniors, mental health, and active addicts. And that doesn't work in any kind of building, but anyways, from her letter, from her notes, it says our goal is that we can achieve some stabilization for this hard to house population in a relatively short period of time. I also wanted to touch base on our discussion with respect to the abstinence-based operating model for this project, and we would not recommend this given the lack of other options for people with active addiction issues in the community. So I'm like, okay, so you're gonna say it's fine to do whatever you want because there are no services here. And I'm like, why don't you put some services here? why don't you, actually look at doing a building, like detox? You can't even get detox here unless you lock yourself in a cupboard. And they talk about the staff and stuff. The staff aren't counselors. They refer people to services, and that's what they said. Well, they'll help them understand a healthy lifestyle, and when they're ready to change, staff will be there for them to refer them to the non-existent detox, any kind of treatment. So it's basically a treatment facility with no treatment.
While the conversation was going on this morning, one of the questions I didn't get to ask, well, or point out, things I point out, is that look, BC Housing is in the housing business. They're not in the detox business. They're not in the mental health business. They're not in the addictions recovery business. Now, what goes on there will be probably, contracted out. They'll have a contracted out
Yeah.
nonprofit to run it, and et cetera, but they're not in the business of doing that.
You
So when
can't.
you ask them, why don't you make
Yeah.
this? Well, they don't make those things. They
No, but
provide
listen,
facilities.
Jack, it's a warehouse,
Mhm.
and they would like to put a warehouse right here, and will affect this community. It could be positive, but from everything in the rollout and everything I've read and all this other stuff, it's not gonna be, unless it's changed, right? So that's what we're trying to do. But as it's stated and as they keep reiterating, it is not good for the community, right?
Well,
And it's
I
confirmed
would-
that it's
I
on.
like if
disagree.
they wanna buy a building and us to go hard after IHA to staff it for recovery, and that's what I said to her, we're willing to do that. And that's, if you're in the business of housing and buildings, cause it's both, right? Then that's fine, give us a building and we'll go after IHA for treatment. But it's, I don't know, it's
And-
delusional.
And we don't have 50 homeless here, which is confirmed already formally from BC Housing. So it becomes a hub. So if they can't fill that premise up, they will be bringing in people from anywhere else in the province and other municipalities, which again then are negating their obligation and responsibility to their community.
I understand that's the way people think about it, and that may happen. No, that way may happen. She pretty much made it clear that empty beds, empty things won't be what they want. And yeah, that's true. But do you think they'll be bringing them in from Maple Ridge or Vancouver?
Yep.
Or do you think maybe they'll be bringing them in from Christina Lake and Castlegar and Greenwood
No,
and
it's from all
Midland?
over the province.
From where, all over the province.
Well, I understand
wherever
that,
it's
but-
necessary.
But I do really find it hard to think that we're going to become a vacuum, a hub to suck in all the people that nobody else wants. Sorry, but I just don't see that. And one thing I can almost guarantee is that whether or not it works, there's a lot of community buy-in that's into that, whether or not it works. And one thing I can almost guarantee is it's going to have a really hard time given the attitudes I've seen. Everybody's going to be looking for all of the possible things they could say. Oh, look, that's not working. Oh, look, they failed here. Oh, they're not doing this, et cetera, et cetera. They're out here trying to help us or help our community, and it seems like a whole bunch of our communities just want them to just stop.
Because they didn't learn the first time.
And all the communications with BC Housing, be it today and previously, they have given no guarantees on any safeguards if something goes wrong. And as my statement is, as still now the mayor and CEO of this corporation, I have to look out for my constituents because their safety is priority.
Did you give safeguards to the people who went to Whispers of Hope because the city owned the facility? Somebody else operated it, but the city owned the facility. It's the same thing here. They'll have a nonprofit, a well-funded nonprofit with 2 full-time staff, 24/7, running that place, and you're asking them for what you wouldn't provide for your own facility. Am I wrong?
We were asked for a building, and we provided a building. That was it. What they did with that building and how that building ended up and the issues that it caused are all back.
But let's go back in time. It wasn't just that. There was the map. There was not just the two organizations that were left over. There was the one that left because the city just couldn't get its act together.
No, that's total bullshit. They came at the 11th hour.
Point of order, Councillor.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I've bugged you enough
That's
on,
because they couldn't get what they wanted,
Yeah.
not because what the city wanted.
I've bugged you enough on that. I have another question, but I'll let her ask her question first.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's,
Three
hey,
councillors.
Councillor Hammond, you're next.
So I just wanted to dispel this myth that you had that council was only speaking out of their own feelings. It's got nothing to do with how I feel. I don't live downtown. It's not gonna directly impact me. I'm listening to the people, you were at that meeting this morning.
Right, and you did not
heard
let,
what everybody
and
said.
what happened when we tried to get in with Christopher Stevenson, who lives downtown
He
in
doesn't
this
have a
town.
business downtown.
No, he lives downtown, and he has probably the biggest discussion board in this community and other communities, and I would suspect that most people get their election in material, news-wise, off of his discussion group on Facebook.
This
You wouldn't let him
meeting
in.
was arranged at UBCM by the councillors that were there during the discussion. They agreed to come and talk to the DBA. It was as you know, it was standing room only. There was people on the stairs and there was people up on the mezzanine and a lot of people that didn't have chairs.
And there were councillors there that don't have businesses downtown.
That are impacted. Now, the person you're talking to could probably get up tomorrow and go to work and get a paycheck. The people that were at that meeting this morning, their paychecks depend on them being able to come to work downtown where it's being impacted. They called that meeting and it was up to them to come and voice their concerns. There is plenty of opportunity for the public to engage because there's going to be public forums and there's going to be open discussions within the community. He knew before he came that it was a closed meeting, but came to challenge it anyway.
I believe there was mixed messages, but.
No, the media was there. I don't consider Facebook as a legitimate media source. You know, it's not a media, mainstream media. The radio station, the newspaper, you were invited, you came, you do media. But Facebook, everybody can administer a Facebook page, so where do you draw the line, right?
Well, at thousands of people.
But at the same time, you're talking about the council making decisions based on our own feelings. And I'm telling you, we're listening to the people that it's gonna impact, we're listening to the community, and we make decisions based on what we feel is the best decision to make for the community at large. And that's the only thing we can go on, is we can't please everybody, but we've gotta look at the entire situation, the bigger picture, and how it's gonna impact the entire community.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ask to film today?
Pardon me?
Were you not able to film today, the meeting?
Oh, no, I put a voice recorder there, but that's not gonna go on the web unless everybody lets me. So.
Well, she knew it was there, she.
No, she knew it was there, other people saw it.
I don't
Next in order.
think she had problems.
No, she didn't have a problem
She
with
didn't have
that, no.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm Amber Savalov. I have Work and Play Clothing and I'm the chairperson of the DBA. So I just want to state that we let BC Housing know we're not opposed to BC Housing's help. We have concerns about the location of this proposal and how it affects our business. We appreciate what BC Housing is doing for the senior care and the family housing, and we let them know that we very much appreciate it and we support it. We just have some big concerns on the location and on the residents and how that may impact our business, and I feel that those concerns are valid. Thank you.
I also think those concerns were heard.
And there's a serious concern, as you mentioned, because being on that corner, it's got nothing to do with homeless situation or anything. There's a possibility, as we all know, at a public meeting, it was stated, we were suggesting on Second, so we're gonna kill them because they're gonna go out on the road. So now you got a highway, which could jeopardize the whole situation by individuals being run down. Then what's gonna happen to Grand Forks? We're gonna make the news again.
Well, there's a community, the homeless population, which I'd rather not refer to them as the homeless population because some of them are not homeless. It's more of the chronically unhousable population.
Yeah.
They form a community and they do congregate together. And so my concern is that there's some repeat offenders who won't be able to access that housing, but with their community mindedness, they will hang outside of that establishment and make it difficult for the rest of us to conduct commerce.
But it is a safety factor too,
It is,
being in
very
such close proximity to that corridor, which is the main thoroughfare through with big trucks, etc.
And the dance studio with the children. Right? That's,
There's many elements that, again, we don't look at it as personal agenda, as Councillor Hammond stated. We have to look at the bigger picture.
I agree that there needs to be housing. I do agree that, but I am concerned for my business and I'm concerned for everyone else's business as well as the children, right, that access that dance studio. I would be very hesitant as a mom to let my child out to go up to that dance studio if there was a,
Well, you've already had your experiences
I have.
with the downtown core, so do most businesses, right, what has happened. And the policing element is another avenue that we have to look at too.
Yeah.
It's a very serious issue because policing is imperative that we have better policing here. But unfortunately, what can we do? Crown lays the charges, so you got another element. Okay, Councillor Tripp.
Come on. Just wanted to make a comment to Les about something that you said that BC Housing can come in here and do whatever they want. Actually, they can't. They have to come before council for form and character. They have to come before council for parking variances. They have to go before the city to get all of the development permits and everything else that they want.
Correct.
So there is that process as well. They can't just waltz in and do whatever they want.
Just like any other business or any other concern.
So was it in their best interest to come in the way they did without being courteous and
Oh, probably not the best choice of timing, no.
that they didn't play the ball game really right from the start, so now we're in the 7th inning. Kate.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kate Sellers for the Gazette. This is a little bit outside the realm of what I typically do in my role as a reporter, but I just thought that I would point out because the misinformation is starting to get to me a little bit, but that council keeps saying we don't have 50 homeless people in the city, and yet in October 2017, when Dara Sutton was here to present the plan for grant funding, council then endorsed her application for grant funding on the grounds that she, as a qualified professional in her field, provided the qualitative estimate that we had around 80 homeless people in the city. Perhaps not 80 homeless people who were addicted, but 80 people needing housing. And council endorsed that resolution, and council told her to go ahead with that estimate. They had her blessing to apply for funding to do more qualitative studies. So, just to put it out there, because we don't have 50 homeless people is bothering me a little bit. Council has endorsed and accepted that we have at least that.
Yeah,
But we did endorse it, yes, but at the same token, BC Housing had the data which showed exactly what the homeless populations were because they have that data. They don't have the individuals' names or identities, but they have the head count. And certain other communities diminished and ours increased.
And now ours is increased, but ask
Yeah.
them.
Could it be a possibility, because we have noticed this where we're located, that when the Beth's shelter closed and the Whispers of Hope soup kitchen closed, the homeless or the chronically unhousable population around our business diminished exponentially?
Oh, definitely.
So
Yeah.
the homeless count at that point, while Beth's and Whispers were operational, could be not what our homeless count is now, without those facilities here attracting more chronically unhousable people.
Oh, definitely.
Exactly, when we had the tactical squad in here from the RCMP during the flood, it diminished immensely.
Yeah.
Immensely.
Yeah. It was an estimate to apply for more funding to do it properly, to do an
To do
actual
it properly.
physical count.
But y'all are acting like it's impossible that we have that many homeless people here, and it's not. Maybe we don't have that many homeless people here right now, but we very well could in the future.
Of course.
Yeah, now keep in mind that of the 80,
If we have the money, for sure.
if that's true, homeless people, the chronically unhoused, the ones that don't want to go into a facility, right? So, and if they act out, they get kicked out, so they go back to the street, and then somebody fills that bed, and then goes back to the street if they get kicked out, so it's a feeding cycle.
The homeless also includes not necessarily those that are in tent city.
Working poor. Yeah.
It's people that are couch surfing. You know, finding another place to stay, they're homeless as well. So, you know, we're not just pointing, in my opinion, I'm not just pointing at those that are the abusers or the chronically unhousable, but it's all, and it could very well have been, at that point in time, 80 people that were, you know, out searching as a result of the flood. My nephew and his wife are homeless.
But this facility is for drug addicts.
No, it is.
No, they're gonna
not
mix
for
it.
drug addicts.
So yeah, in that
That's
80
misinformation.
that came through, in that initial count, Dara considered herself homeless as well.
Yes.
Now, she was employed, she had a child and 2 dogs, and she was having difficulty finding an apartment because there's no doubt that we have and had a shortage of housing. We had a negative housing availability here. So we had a definite shortage. Now, that's gonna be assisted by the low-income housing and the housing that's coming in for families and seniors. So they're resolving that. They recognize that when they looked at the stats, they said today when we met with them that they didn't realize at the time how short of housing we were in this community. They've done their research, they've come back in and they went, wow, like you didn't have housing before the flood, now you need even more. That's why they're bumping up the amount of affordable housing units they're gonna be building here. They're not for the homeless, they're for people like Darryl who are working but don't have apartments or don't have houses or can't afford houses. Because you know what happens, the fewer houses you have available, the higher the rents go. So they become unaffordable. People start putting their rents up because it's a supply and demand. And if you don't have the supply, you can charge basically whatever you want. We increase that supply and the rental prices will come down, the housing prices will probably stabilize and come down, and more people can afford to get into conventional housing or apartments.
And yet unfortunately, the supportive housing is taking priority where it's scheduled for June, yet the other one is September. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, may I say something? The proposed housing on Central and Second is not strictly for drug addicts and those with opioid. Well, you know what I'm saying.
As soon as we admit you have a problem.
But it's intended to be, to assist those that want help, that want to come in, that, and not everybody is, because they are going to have to pay rents. And there are still those that are not going to want to do that because they're going to need those funds to support their habit. But it's also intended for others, like the ones with the issues, the ones that are transitioning out of their issues, and they want to give like life learning skills. I mean, there's a myriad of things, and I think everybody, and I can understand why, but it's concentrating strictly on the drug addicted, chronic, repeat offenders. And I can understand that, and I understand the concerns. If I was in your shoes, I'd be feeling the same way. But let's not just say that these 38, 40, or 50, whatever units that they're proposing there is strictly for drug
It's
users.
supposed to be blended.
Which is
Right.
worse.
Yeah, Councillor Crowd gave a great analogy of that this afternoon
Yeah.
when he talked about the prison mentality.
And recovery addicts, I mean, if you get people that are recovering from addiction and they are injected with people that are still actively addicts, what do you think
Too
the
much
recovery
temptation.
people are gonna be doing?
I can't speak, I don't have no experience on that, but I'm just saying that this is what they are telling us.
Go ahead,
It's a
Liz.
chocolate cake. It's like desserts. When they're in front of you, it's when you're an addict and it's right there.
Well, not the one we had at UBC.
Go ahead, Liz.
Okay, I would like to take umbrage at the statement you just made, Chris Hammett, that when there's low rental accommodations, that the landlords will jack up the rent just to make more money. I mean, I had a rental place for a while. I didn't do that. She has a rental place for a while. She has had a rental place for a long time, and you're basically saying that she's gonna jack up the rent every time she sees the opportunity.
No,
You're tarring all landlords
No,
with that
I said it's a
filthy
supply
commercial
and
brush.
demand.
Pardon me?
It's a supply and
You're not
demand.
allowed.
No, it's not supply and demand.
I know
It
it's
doesn't
not.
work like that. This is not a commodity in that fashion. Sure, there may be people who will try and suck as much profit as they can out of their rental because there's a very, very high demand and a low supply.
What do you think
But-
drives house pricing up?
What drives house pricing up is speculative purchases in the Lower Mainland in Toronto. It's not rentals.
No, but people buying houses here, if we have no housing stock, people can ask a higher price for their house, and they do.
Yeah, but you've got people coming here and going, oh yeah, that's what you want, sure, I'll take it. They're not haggling.
That's
Why?
right.
Because they're flush with cash.
That's right.
Because they're making it somewhere else when they sell their house.
That's right.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about your idea that a landlord is just going to jack the rent up when this tenant leaves because they know that there's a high demand and low supply.
It's actually not allowed.
It's not allowed, exactly. You're basically accusing a whole group of people of purely commercial motives.
No, but I have seen the house prices rise and the rents rise here in the past few years.
Yeah, but they're two different things. And yes, the house prices are rising all across North America.
Yeah.
Not just here, and we're talking rural areas.
But if we have more housing stock, that pricing will stabilize too.
Will it? Really? You're guessing that it will, just like you're guessing that this will be a horrible mess. It's just a guess. You don't have a crystal ball. And aside from that, here's a question. I'm
You
looking
gotta
at,
go with track record, Les, on that last statement, and they've got a track record. Penticton is one example,
Mhm.
right? And there's others, but I'm not gonna label them all.
an example of the housing
And
thing.
where it's failed.
Oh,
Okay, you're saying.
I'm not
you
saying
can't
they're
predict
all
it's
gonna be
fail.
successes.
We don't have to predict that it's gonna fail. It already has failed, to their own admission that it's failed. It was on global news where Penticton, it failed dramatically. And
has
why? Because
every
it became
single one of their
administration.
projects failed? I mean, Mr. Mayor, you're basically pulling at the worst thing you can think of right off the top of your head and throwing it at me.
Because you made the statement that we can't predict failure and that it won't work. I'm telling you, factual evidence proves that we don't have to have a crystal ball to prove it. It was already happened. So now they're remediating that one and putting another one.
I disagree with your dragging that out, but hey, you could be wrong, I could be wrong, you could be right, I could be wrong. Next question. I'm looking at the financial plan amendment bylaw, and I just need some clarification on a particular acronym here. Nothing
Can
to
you
do with
make it
housing.
quick, because we are.
Yeah, no, I
pushing
get
on the
that.
table, and this is totally off topic if you're gonna switch topics.
Okay, down here, I'm looking at something called WWTP upgrades for $454,000. What is
Wastewater treatment
WWTP?
plant. Wastewater.
There we
Wastewater
go.
treatment
Okay,
plant.
that's it, thank you. Okay, that's it. I'm off your back.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Worship and Councillors. My name's Nigel James, and I'm a member of the corporation.
A shareholder.
No, I didn't have shares because you don't give a dividend.
Go ahead.
However, in my economics I did, there are two basic laws of economics. The law of, supply and demand, and the law of diminishing returns. And they are immutable.
And that one's straight to the point.
So can you jack up your rent just because you want to? No. It's not, it's a controlled situation. This is not laissez-faire. We're not talking about a free market. We're talking about a controlled area. Rentals, like.
Okay.
Go ahead, take it, Jerry.
Okay, we're so far off,
Yeah.
right? So we should like
It was a good discussion,
Let's
though.
pull in the reins again.
pull it back and let Nigel ask another.
When was that? Oh, me?
Is it based on the same subject again?
Well, indeed, as I understand the rental situation, people rent landlords can raise their rents by 4.6%, I think, during the coming year. That's been permitted by the
That's
provincial.
close.
There is also, when people leave a rented property, I understand then all bets are off, and you can then charge what is the going rate, or more than the going rate, or let it go free. I don't know.
So
I mean,
that's
it's up
why
to
people have
up
the
to landlord.
renovation
And the
eviction,
province
right,
is
where the
already looking at
renovations-
that aspect now, about rental increases, it was just on the news.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's, I think that's what Councillor Hamlet was referring to when she said they jack up the rent. If you've got an existing tenant, you're limited in what more you can charge in a year.
Yeah.
But if it's vacant, if your tenant moves out and you wanna have somebody else move in, you can ask.
She directly implied that that's exactly what happens, period, that's it. That's what she said.
I didn't
No, I
take it that
didn't.
way.
Yes, you did.
Well, this was a heartwarming discussion.
You misunderstood.
Can we
Let's leave the
move
rental
on?
stop to the
Can we
landlord.
please move on?
Yeah.
Do we have the motion right back?
Yeah, we have
We're
got-
voting on it?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Please.
I'm aging at a rapid pace here.
Darn, I should have read, because this is so much fun.
The motion was that staff deliver to council any minutes taken at ad hoc meetings by city employees.
No,
Hold on, Councilor.
no, it's the mover of the motion.
Okay, let's enter it again.
That staff deliver the minutes from the ad hoc housing committee from the flood recovery team to council immediately.
Oh, we gotta leave out a few.
You gotta put in the timing, because I've made motions before and 6 months down the road.
Immediately.
You gotta put in a time.
Okay, so do we have a second for that?
Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Councilor Chris. That doesn't look like there's any discussion on that. All those in favor?
Agreed.
Anyone opposed? Okay, you're opposed?
Aye.
All right, I'll put forward another motion.
It's gonna be trial and error.
Don't we have to make Norris a motion?
This is funner. That's a real word.
That staff be directed to deliver the minutes from the ad hoc housing committee within the next week at their convenience.
Second.
Discussion? I think they said there wasn't any, but.
You want-
I can tell you who was on it. Do you want me to tell everyone who was on it, or do you want to just deliver it to council?
Are you talking about the recovery team?
Yeah, there was, and I mean, we have it in emails that there was, and we've been told by staff that they went to meetings and there was discussion and that staff compiled notes from those meetings. They weren't official minutes, but they have notes of who was at the meetings and what was discussed, and they are now compiling them and they're gonna put them on the Boundary Flood Recovery website.
Right.
But as,
So there's no minutes, so why are we requesting minutes? They're
okay,
just
should we ever
notes.
say notes?
No, this, yeah.
They're gonna be on the website, so they're gonna be public.
I think it's just imperative that council take back the reins from the flood recovery team a little bit.
Well, the flood management is under the jurisdiction of the regional district. It's their flood management plan that we operate under.
No. The recovery team has,
Yeah.
at the top of the pyramid, it's supposed to be reporting to, those 5 pillars are supposed to be reporting to council through the CAOs
And to the regional district.
and to the regional district. So if council has absolutely no control over the flood recovery team, that's a problem.
Considering regional district has so minute amount of flood victims.
The fact that all the decisions on flood recovery are being made by an unelected group of people for our city, I would hope that council would see that as a problem.
Okay, well,
Garcia.
Yeah, I don't think this.
Your worship, correction is that flood recovery is getting material so that decisions can be made at the council and board body. The flood recovery does not make decisions on the livelihood of everyone. They employ or contract professionals that come with the information and they do all the groundwork. And that is
And they should be reporting back to council, not going to be
always with the flood recovery. And when there's anything that needs to have a decision, that team is so professional that they would never, ever not take anything to council or to the board.
But Mr. Mayor, if that housing committee is dealing directly with BC Housing without reporting their ideas to council first, that's why I want to see the copies of these notes, because if there's a ad hoc committee that is not reporting back to council, that's going directly to the province, that's an issue for the taxpayers.
But I'm not sure how that came about.
That's why we need to see the minutes, that's why we need to see the minutes.
I don't know that BC Housing would approach
This is getting.
the flood recovery.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy to wait until they're made public to everybody. I'm not
Okay.
interested. in
As
getting
long
into
as
that.
the notes include the members that were at that committee, I'm okay with that.
So,
Are the notes going
Fine.
to include the members of the committee?
I don't have no idea.
go ahead, Les.
As I understand, flood recovery,
Talk about rent though.
pardon me?
Don't mention rent.
No, I won't. As I understand the way that the flood recovery team is working, they have various parts being dealt with by various people or organizations. Now, Urban Matters is being brought in to deal with housing. Is there a committee, or is it just Urban Matters? Like, would this be Urban Matters doing this, or would it be?
And was
A
Urban
committee.
Matters at that committee meeting? They should be, right?
It's questionable.
When the recovery team was reaching out for housing information, they reached out to the group of people that had all these different factions, as I said before. Urban Matters came in on after the fact, and so Urban Matters is now the professional entity that's working with all these other pieces.
Why don't we invite the flood recovery team to attend a meeting of council, perhaps our next committee of the whole, and to address these issues? We're second guessing. And I don't think that's fair to council, the citizens, or the flood recovery team.
Councillor Thompson, I'm not second guessing. I was at that dinner when we were told exactly who was at that committee. You know who was at that committee, Councillor Hammett knows, and so do I. I just want to know why the public is not allowed to know.
Well, I'm saying that they will in due course, and when, you know, the notes may be put up tomorrow, I don't know. But at the same time, but I mean, if there's concerns about how this came about, then I think that it's appropriate that the flood recovery team be invited so that they can publicly answer these questions. They're not here tonight, so
Well, in the flood recovery team, the housing pillar, their only mandate is to provide housing for those people that have been displaced by the flood. They wouldn't be working with BC Housing on a supported housing project, only dealing with those people that have lost their house or have no place to stay as a result of the flood from
So then
their
who's
house.
And that's
then
why
who's
I asked the
working-
question
Who's
that I
working with
asked.
BC Housing?
We're understood nobody was on that project.
Then why do we have an
Well,
email
yeah,
telling us that
exactly.
there was an ad hoc committee meeting with BC Housing? You got the same email.
Exactly.
they're
There's
just
confusion here.
poor choice of words.
Yeah, I don't think it was on that committee.
Okay. So, okay. Are we ready to move on?
I have a second motion on the table. I
Oh,
need
okay.
to-
Oh, okay.
What is that motion?
That
We-
staff deliver the minutes from the ad hoc housing committee
No.
sometime
Change that to no.
No.
Staff delivered the notes.
And or minutes, you can put and or minutes.
within the next week at their conveniences.
If this doesn't work, you can extend it to a month.
I'll second.
Okay, let's do it again. All those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Alright, can't let them go for China.
Hey. Can't go 3 weeks without.
All
All
right,
right.
then adjourn.
Any other questions? Any other?
Has to be on the agenda, eh?
Pardon me?
Has to be on stuff on the agenda, eh?
Yeah.
You can bridge really well if you're.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just start by saying
Take a
something.
Well, okay, I've already told Councillor Hammett about this, and I've told Graham Watt about this, and I've run it by a few other people, so I guess I should tell the public and all of you. While Cannabis was on, I had this crazy idea. Next morning, I typed it up and I sent it off to Nick Green. Why Nick Green? Because Nick Green is in the movie business, or at least he wants to be in the movie business. And my idea is simple. If you ever watched the movie Rambo and the gas station blew up, that was a gas station that was set to be demolished in Hope, and they used it in the movie. If you watch Mars Attacks, you see a Las Vegas hotel being blown down, which was something that was going to happen anyway, so they used it in the movie. We have a whole subdivision of buildings that will be raised. So I'm trying to sell that to Hollywood.
You might be sounding a little insensitive right now to the people that are voting.
Well, I understand that, but I've actually mentioned this to a resident of Russell, and he passed it on to somebody who has another son who's in the movie business, and that guy is out there putting out feelers, and he's got interest back. So now the Okanagan Film Commission is also invested in this, and we're trying to sell North Russell as a demo so Hollywood can come here and make a movie, or North Hollywood, which...
Bruce Willis is good at blowing crap up.
Pardon me? Yeah, well,
Can we have Chris Hemsworth?
I know it might be a bit insensitive, but if all those buildings are gonna go anyways, if they can come and basically take the cost of it off of our hands, if they make a movie out of it, then we can show that movie on the anniversary of the flood every year. I mean, if they come here and spend a month of time here to make a
Giving
movie,
you too much latitude.
They did that for the final season of Full House on the Prairie.
I'm just saying that if they come here and spend a month or 3 weeks making a movie, they drop an awful lot of money in the economy, they give people jobs for the intervening time, and if they were able to take all the costs of demoing all that and disposing of the material off of our hands, it would help us. So that's my crazy idea. I'm seeking funding support outside of the government, and I'd like to hear that the flood recovery people are searching for other forms of support and funding and granting that don't have to do with the province or the federal government, because there's supposed to be other things out there. Both the EDA and the engineers said this is the richest environment for funding support they've ever seen. So why are we just sucking on the government teats? That's my question, and that's my crazy idea. So now you all know.
With all due respect, I did you a do, and I'm calling for a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Councilor Thompson, Councilor. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Can't say it wasn't fun.
Honey can filter down to the flood. You never know.
I think that's a great idea.